Okay, so we are here at the Ethereum Community Conference in Paris, and I had the pleasure to be able to have a few minutes of Vitalik's time, and he had the niceness to be willing to share that with us. So we just thought we'd have a conversation about the stuff that you'd want to share at this point in time. There's a lot of cool things going on with Ethereum 2. People are asking you about that all the time, so maybe there's some other subjects you'd like to get out there and talk about. So what are you excited about for 2020?
Sure, and I think, as you mentioned, ETH2 is definitely one of the big kind of stories of this year and the next, and probably the year after that. Also, kind of scaling in the shorter term. So, on the ETH2 side, phase 0, this is the phase that just launches an independent proof of stake chain, what we call the beacon chain. That's in the kind of very late development and of optimization, security auditing, already had a bunch of testing. We're gonna keep on having a test networks sort of stage. And so we expect phase 0 to launch at some point in the summer.
Okay.
So that's something that we're very excited about. Proof of stake is finally going to be real. Then after phase 0, there's phase 1, which brings sharding of data, and then after that there's the rest of the ETH2 roadmap. So lots of really good progress on scaling. Even like the spec there is almost done. For example, it's mostly an implementation challenge now. The other thing that's kind of coming a bit sooner is some of the other scaling research has been making huge progress in the last few months, which is rollups.
Okay.
Right, so if you're not familiar, rollups basically are the scaling technique which keeps data, like transaction data on chain, but in a very compressed form, so you could knock it down to something like 10 or 20 bytes per transaction, but pushes computation off chain. Right? And instead of verifying computation, like for example, signature verification, contract execution, zero knowledge proof execution, whatever, on chain directly, you're verifying those things either inside of a ZK snark, so one person runs the computations, generates a zero knowledge proof, everyone else verifies the proof, or inside of a fraud proof scheme. So basically you have some kind of small set of actors, we call them sequencers, that just publish what they think the results of the computation are, or kind of Merkle roots of the results. And if anyone thinks any result is wrong, they can just publish some more kind of witness data, and that allows the computation to be verified on chain, but it's only done on chain if people disagree, right? So the first technique, it's called ZK rollup. The second technique, it's called optimistic rollup. They're both amazing and great. On the optimistic side, we've had multiple kind of teams making huge progress. So Optimism and Arbitrum are kind of two of the teams that have been really pushing ahead recently. And the amazing thing about these teams is that they're not just scaling payments in the way that some of the previous solutions did, right? They are scaling something which is equivalent to the Ethereum virtual machine. And then on the other side, you have ZK rollups, and ZK rollups, you have Loopring, which recently launched a beta of their ZK rollup-based decentralized exchange. So on-chain, fully kind of non-custodial, so you can withdraw your coins even if the exchange breaks. And they can theoretically do up to 2,500 transactions per second if every Ethereum user becomes a Loopring user. So that's also amazing, and they've recently made huge strides in improving the efficiency of their proofs. So I expect both of those technologies to really make a huge difference over the next year or so. And then just zooming in on ZK rollups a bit more, there's been a lot of progress on zero knowledge proofs, ZK snarks, plonks, darks, all of these things over the last half year or so, right? We saw a bunch of things involving polynomial commitments come out back in September. On my blog, I wrote some articles explaining some of those things. And then this month, there's been a lot of quiet work going on, and even making it possible to do zero knowledge proofs for general computation.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be great for any ZK rollup, and it's also going to be great for both kind of scalable verification of computation, and also the other thing that it's great for that I'm also excited about, which is kind of the growth of privacy.
Great. Yeah. So as we look at a lot of, on the entrepreneurial side, as people are looking at building projects, looking at solving things, looking at potentially building businesses around those, one of the big limiting factors has been scalability for these things. And now that a lot of that's being addressed with Ethereum too, and that's going to create so much more opportunity. Do you have any specific advice, or just as people look now at building a scalable solution that needs scalability, they can finally potentially be able to build that and potentially build a business around it, or a solution that is scalable so that it's commercializable. Any suggestions on what that looks like, or what you would?
Yeah, so I think first of all, a lot of applications that kind of migrated over to private or consortium chains historically, which there's a few legitimate reasons to do, scalability being a really big one, I think are going to become viable on the public chain going forward. Okay. Because before, the story was, if you're on the public chain, then you can do maximum 15 transactions a second, and furthermore, you're competing with everyone else that wants to be part of those 15 transactions a second. But if we're talking about a roll-up, then you're going up to 2,500 or 3,000 a second. If you talk about sharding, that's going up to like 2 to 10,000 a second. And then if you do a roll up on top of sharding, then you go even way higher than that. The gains multiply. And so scalability of doing things on public blockchains is going to very soon be good enough for many kinds of even mainstream enterprise applications. And I think that's definitely going to lead to a change of focus for a lot of people.
Yeah, that's exciting, because I know that's the thing that has forced people to potentially look at other platforms when they would maybe have preferred to stay inside of Ethereum. Last question, just to have your thoughts on there's a lot of topics that we're looking at this year that seem to be the buzz. So we've got everything blockchain, everything enterprise blockchain that potentially requires some kind of scalability, which we've just addressed in this idea. We also can look at tokenized assets and securities and where that's going. And then we have the whole CBDC discussion, the whole digital currency that is either sovereign, corporate, or decentralized. Any thoughts on the whole sovereign, corporate, decentralized, China, Libra, Bitcoin, or whatever, those ideas? What are your thoughts on where digital currencies on a global level are going?
And I think all three of those types are going to exist and are going to continue to exist. First of all, whether blockchains exist or not, I think the trends toward more and more digitization is inevitable. There's a bunch of reasons why people want to move to digital money of different forms, and there's obviously huge advantages to that, but the main challenge with central bank and even corporate currencies is basically the kind of concentration of power, the concentration of data collection, that you become dependent on potentially central intermediaries that can exert a very fine-grained degree of control over who has the ability to participate in these systems and who can't. And we've been seeing many situations where even things that are perfectly legal just end up getting restricted because of whoever runs these centralized choke points just wants to exclude some category of users. And I think those are reasons why people will continue to be interested in fully decentralized digital currencies, or cryptocurrencies, or cybercoins, as Zuko calls them. And it's also going to be, I think, a reason why people will continue to push for more privacy, even in the more centralized alternatives. Right. Yeah, it's centralized digital currencies without privacy are a huge step back from even what we have today with both cash and even intermediated commercial money, where at least you have some kind of intermediary, like a bank or an institution, that kind of has some incentive to protect your data on your behalf. They reveal some things, but they're not revealing everything. Whereas if you have a fully centralized thing with zero privacy, it goes way down. But if you have something that has reasonable cryptographic privacy protections, then potentially things could be even better than today. So I think we'll see all three kinds of systems, and all three kinds of systems will compete with each other, and I think they'll actually push each other to do better.
Awesome, fantastic. Well, thank you for taking the time to share a few thoughts with us, and enjoy your stay in Paris.
Thank you.
Thanks. Cool.
For more news and updates, follow us on Twitter.